Shabbat Shalom, good evening. I am Rabbi Javier Carapan, and I am joined this evening by Leslie Zucker, Howard Pitler, and Warren Sickle, and our technical team. A big thank you to our BOW committee for bringing us beyond our walls, and to our digital docents who are managing the streaming. We're also pleased that tonight is our Beit Midrash, our House of Learning program, and after an abbreviated worship service, we will welcome Todd Stettner, who will speak about Jews in the Civil War, and we look forward to hearing and learning from Todd. It's right here. On Facebook Live, please follow the comments for useful information during the service, and on the virtual sanctuary, look for the links right above the player. On Facebook Live, you can say hello by typing Shabbat Shalom and your location in the comments line. If you need technological help while you are following our streaming, we invite you to write down our technical assistance line. TAL is 913-303-1134. You can text that number, and one of our docents will get back to you as soon as they can. And for those of us joining here in person, a reminder that we're calling the pages numbers in brackets, and also a reminder to please silence your electronic devices. We welcome Shabbat together as we light the candles. At home, we invite you to go ahead and light the candles. And on page 120, we join together in the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Our service continues on page 138. We will be singing together stanzas 1, 3, and 9. And just a reminder, do not sit down at the end of the prayer Lecha Dodi, because we go right into Baruch Hu. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela. La 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 la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela.
Shemor v'zachur b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu Eloheinu Adonai echad, Shemo echad, Yeshivu tiferet v'liti la la
La la la la la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, B'nei P'nei Shabbat Mikavela. Mikdash Melech Ir Melucha, ומצאים מתוך ההפכה, רב לשבת בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם לה 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 לה. לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקרא ביום. לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת שבת, פני פני שבת נקרא ביום.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני ים סגולה. בואי חלה,
בואי חלה, לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת מקבלה. לה 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 לה. לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה, B'nei Shabbat nekavelo, lecha lekadoti lekad kala, B'nei Shabbat nekavelo. We continue together on page 152. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Ve'ahavta
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בעם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Emet. It's November. It must be time for Hanukkah.
Of course. It's always time for Hanukkah in November. Once every few years.
You know, this year I was just sharing with everybody that as soon as, people start thinking about Christmas, they're going to ask us about Hanukkah. I mean, like you missed it. It's over. It's just, it went by. You just totally missed it. We have nothing for you to celebrate with us.
We had
at the end of December, right? Exactly.
Oh, now I want turkey and latkes.
So with that in mind, let's continue together with Mi Chamocha, and I think you'll know why. Mi Chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha, Nedar v'Kodesh, Norateinot, Oseh We continue together in the middle of page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and rise us up, O guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. God, our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Israel, ve'al Yerushalayim. בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. תהילתך. אנא נא 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 אדוני, אנא נא 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 שפתי תפתח, אנא נא 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 ופי יגיד תהילתך. אנא נא 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 אדוני, אנא נא 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 שפתי תפתח, אנא נא 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 ופי יגיד תהילתך.
ata Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekone Hakol, Vezocher Chastevot v'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei Vnehem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Ata Rav Lehoshia, Ma'ashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGashem, Mechalchel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'neiman ata lahachayot metim, Baruch ata Adonai, Mechaye hametim. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahlelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
We now turn our thoughts to those in need of healing. You may have access to the Misheberach list through the e-news that you received this morning. You can also follow the link in the comments. we invite you to type names in the comments. Please go ahead and begin typing. For those of us here in person, we invite you to share names as we point around the sanctuary. Start on this side. Chris Gray. As we think of those in need of healing, we join our voices in page 371 as we share in the Misheberach prayer. As we think of those in need of healing, we also turn our prayers to those who help in healing first responders and health workers all over the world during this pandemic. May those who care for the sick with their hands, their voices, and their hearts be blessed with courage and stamina. May those who pursue healing through medical skill and knowledge be blessed with insight, patience, and compassion. May all of us, the sick and the well together, find courage and hope. And let us say, Amen. It's now time for our Simcha moment. We invite you to share a joy from this past week by typing it in the comments line. And please go ahead and begin typing and enter return. For those of us here in person, we have our new microphone here. If you would like to share a Simcha, please come forward. Just stand there in front of the mic and we can all hear you.
I'm Carol. I always think that's funny, but there are a lot of people that don't know me. I'm so excited to see all of you here tonight, and I know that I didn't make you come. I think our special speaker is going to bring out all the people, but it's really wonderful to see you. And I was invited to be on Shalom Squad this week, so I got a chance to greet all of you in person, more or less. So my mitzvah was that I finally convinced Audrey to come to services, and I ended up bringing her. That was one way to ensure that she got here.
I'm Samantha Hammondtree, and I have two simchas today. My anniversary, 22 years, is tomorrow. Married here at Congregation Beth Torah. And secondly, my daughter signed with KU this week to play soccer. So, yeah.
I'm Amy Rosenfeld, and last Saturday night, Rabbi Katapan married Lesson and my daughter Rachel Rosenfeld to Bradley Dlatt.
I'm just happy to be back. I had a rough fall, and I just can't tell you how much the spirit of CBT and the people that I've been involved in, how much it's really helped me move past my various predicaments.
Good to have you back.
I'm on a cane now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Larry Altman. I am up here to share with you and congratulate my students, undergraduate students at Avila University, who are taking from me a class on civil rights and diversity. And I've been bringing in guest speakers with various backgrounds. And the last two assignments that they have, as a team, as all of them have turned in, telling what I require them to do is to write out 5 of the most important things they've learned from each of their speakers that we've brought in. And Rabbi and everybody in this congregation, I wish I could share it all with you, because the things they learned from those speakers about diversity and understanding others who are not like them give me and others I've shared some of their papers and they've given me permission to do so, great hope for future leaders of our country. And I just am up here thanking those students for doing such an outstanding job, even though they're not here tonight.
Our Simcha is a community Simcha. We like to recognize all our veterans today. So if you are here and you're a veteran, we'll ask you to stand. We're not going to make you do anything. Just stand so to be recognized. And for those of you, wait, don't sit down yet. Don't listen to them. You just have to talk to me. Don't listen. They tell you thank you. Just stay there, please. Because I need to tell those at home that please stand as well. And we're going to offer together a prayer on this Veterans Day. God of compassion, God of dignity and strength, watch over the veterans of the United States in recognition of their loyal service to our nation. Bless them with wholeness and love, shelter them, heal their wounds, comfort their hearts, grant them peace. God of justice and truth, rock of our lives, bless our veterans, these men and women of courage and valor, with a deep and abiding understanding of our profound gratitude. Protect them and their families from loneliness and want. Give them lives of joy and bounty. May their dedication and honor be remembered as a blessing from generation to generation. Blessed are you, protector and redeemer, our shield and our stronghold. Thank you. You may be seated now. As we gather all our simchas, we join our voices in singing the Shechayanu blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Our service continues with Aleinu L'Shabeach. It's on page 586. If you're able, please stand and join us.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני Bayom hahu, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad.
This past week, we commemorated the 82nd anniversary of Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, that occurred between the 9th and 10th of November 1938. So it's 83, not 82, 83. Can you help me?
I support you on
Thank
this.
you. We remember a night of darkness and fear that swept the heartland of Christian Europe like a scourge. We remember those who were persecuted, Jews for being Jews. We remember those who spoke out, brave souls who tried to save a world. And we remember the silence. How many stood aside, mute and unconcerned, forgetting the divine command, "You shall not stand idle while your neighbor bleeds." For the sin of silence, for the sin of indifference, for the secret complicity of the neutral, for the closing of borders, for the washing of hands from blame, for the crime of forgetfulness, for the sin of meaningless rhetoric. Let there be no forgetfulness before the throne of glory, and let memory startle us at any moment when we lie down and when we rise up. Let us remember and never forget. God in heaven, we remember. We remember the night of broken glass. We remember the burning of synagogues. We remember the looting of schools. We remember the destruction of orphanages. We remember the arrests, the deportations, the deaths. We pray that those who suffered might teach us the enormity of silence in the face of injustice. God in heaven, hear us, we pray. To those whose life changed forever on that night, we add our own loved ones. We are observing the Shloshim period for Lori Phillips, loved one of Paula Freeman and Marcia Reedmaster. And on this Shabbat, we remember the following yortzites of members of our congregation: Jeffrey Stephen Blum, Iola Cohen, Sasha Paris Cohn, Rose Ellis, Margaret Gersh, Donald Golden, Bertha Goldstein, Ruth Goldstein, William Clapper, Benjamin Petitpes, Lynn Rubin, Ruth Slade, Doris Snower, Larry Weiner, Sam Zavolo. Zichronam livracha, may the memories be for a blessing. On page 598, we join together as a congregation to recite Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמה דברה חירותה וימליך מלכותה, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דא אמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל
We now have welcomed and celebrated Shabbat. Now it's time to immerse ourselves in our Beit Midrash, our house of learning. And on this Shabbat, when we mark Veterans Day, our guest speaker is Todd Stettner, who will discuss the Jewish involvement in American Civil War. But before that, a few words about our guest speaker. Todd has spent more than 4 decades in social services. In 1999, he and his wife Shirley, who's joining us this evening, and their 2 children, Jordan and Max, moved to Kansas City, where Todd became the professional leader of our Jewish Federation. Since retiring in 2016, Todd has served as the 2-year interim director of the Kansas City-based Medical Missions Foundation, which provides surgical and other medical services to underserved communities around the world. Currently, Todd serves on the board of Village Shalom and is a mentor in the Masters of Arts in Jewish Professional Studies program at Spertus Institute in Chicago. Todd has been interested in Civil War since his teens. He has supported the Civil War Trust, also known as the American Battlefield Trust, for over 2 decades. And also Todd participates in the Civil War Roundtable of Kansas City. He has visited most of the major battlefields on the East Coast and the Midwest. And in 2013, he presented on Jews and the Civil War at the Rabbinical Association Day of Discovery. So tonight we are honored and delighted to welcome Todd to our bima to teach us about soldiers, sailors, and spies, Jews in the Civil War. Welcome, Todd.
Good evening, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for that nice introduction, and I want to thank your president, Larry Meyer, for inviting me tonight, and Viva Simons for arranging all of these things. I also want to thank my wife, Shirley. I schlepped her to a lot of those battlefields in the Eastern Theater in Virginia to learn more about the Civil War. So thank you, Shirley, for that, for being very patient with me. I also want to say thank you to all the veterans that are here tonight and those that may be watching, and to those that have served us throughout all our wars. It's been 156 years since the end of the Civil War. Now, I'm not going to go into tonight any of the pre-war Civil War things about life for the Jews, because there's all sorts of things about slavery and things we could talk about of what happened to the Jews before the war. I'm going to talk primarily about the soldiers that fought on both sides tonight, so let's concentrate on that. In a post-war essay by Mark Twain titled "Concerning the Jews," Twain stated that the Jews did not do their part in terms of fighting in America's armed forces. He was not alone in this sentiment at the time. To quote Twain, he, meaning the Jew, is a frequent, faithful, and capable officer in the civil service, but he is charged with an unpatriotic disinclination to stand by the flag as a soldier, much like the Christian Quaker. This was the charges that were being brought against the Jews in the 1890s, post-war Civil War. In 1895, Simon Wolfe, a lawyer and a Lincoln supporter, who was a lobbyist at that time in Washington, D.C. for B'nai B'rith, published a book, The American Jew as Patriot, Soldier, and Citizen. You can purchase it, by the way, on Amazon. I just got myself a copy. It's actually not for purchase, it's free, believe it or not. He did this in response to anti-Semitic charges that no Jews were to be found fighting alongside Union soldiers in the Civil War. Simon was able to chronicle that over 6,000 to 7,000 Jews actually served the North, and 2,000 to 3,000 served the South. His research indicated the War Department figures revealed that Jewish Americans were actually represented in the nation's military in a large percentage for their share of the population at the time. Now, there were about 31 million people in the United States, according to the census at that time. 150,000 of them were Jews, so they were about 0.5%. While many anti-Semites did defame Jewish patriotism and service, once this data was revealed, Twain, who was not an anti-Semite, issued a retraction in his essay, The Jew as Soldier. The Jews that were here came from Europe, they came from Central Europe, they came from Russia, and they wanted to be part of the communities that they lived in. And at the risk of generalizing, Jews in the South owned slaves and certainly supported and defended slavery. They also supported the states' rights arguments of the Southerners. Those in the North supported preserving the Union, and some were ardent abolitionists. The war begins when Fort Sumter was attacked on April 12, 1861, and a Jew from Charleston, a Mexican War veteran, Lieutenant Jacob Valentine, was one of the first artillerists who fired on the fort. Later, Jacob commanded Fort Moultrie, which if you've ever been to Charleston, it still exists, and it was one of forts guarding Charleston Harbor throughout the war. So since I've started with the South, let's talk about some of these rebel Jews. In the Confederate Army, there were 24 Jews who were Army officers. There were 11 who were naval officers. Jews on both sides, by and large, chose to join their forces as individuals and blend in with their neighbors and with their friends. Remember, while there was anti-Semitism at this time, it was not religion that was the great separator in the South, but actually race. Jews were largely accepted and welcomed in the antebellum South and during the war era. However, despite this tendency, there were 2 Jewish companies organized in the South, one at West Point, Georgia, and the other at Macon, Georgia. You'll see later there were a couple in the north as well. So while there were only 2 Jewish units formed, there were also some which had large numbers of Jews in their midst. For instance, when the Richmond Blues left for war in 1861, 99 members were Jewish, and the Richmond Greys also committed a large number of Jews. The South was their home, and they were going to fight and defend their home and their friends and their neighbors. There were no Jewish Confederate generals in the field and few colonels, primarily because they had no history in what was called the Old Army. That was the army of the Mexican War. And few attended the military academies of the time or were veterans of the Mexican War. Senior officers also tended to be politically connected, and few Jews had the status or the connections to be appointed as officers. One, however, who did fit this criteria was Abraham Charles Meyer of Georgetown, South Carolina. He served as quartermaster general of the Confederacy and was a graduate of West Point. He fought in the Seminole War and later on in the Mexican War. He's known today, and you'll recognize it right away, thanks to Major General David Twiggs, his father-in-law, who named Fort Myers, Florida, in his honor. I don't know how many of you who go down to Florida know that. Jews in the Confederate Navy included Captain Levi Charles Harvey of South Carolina. Now get this, he was 68 years old when the war broke out. His service with the U.S. Navy went back to the War of 1812. In 1863, he played a major role in recapturing the port of Galveston from the Union. Harvey was in command of a small boat, the Neptune, which was dubbed a cotton-clad because its sides were protected by cotton bales. It was assigned to ram and help capture a major warship, the Harriet Lane. It was sunk before it could ram the ship, but sank in shallow water. It kept firing until another, cotton-clad, helped, and together they ultimately succeeded in capturing the ship. Reminds me of the little engine that could. When the war ended, Levy was in command of the harbor of Galveston. He died in 1870, a rebel to the end. He never sought a pardon for his role in the war. The Confederate Navy was very small. Most Jews in the Confederacy fought on the land. One of those was a first-generation immigrant, Major Adolph Proskauer. He was a native of Prussia. He came to Alabama via Philadelphia. This adopted son of the South became an officer in the 12th Alabama Infantry. He started as a simple private, but rose through the ranks. He was brave, smart, and fearless. And from what I read, he was also good-looking, very well clad in his uniform. By the time Lee marched north into Maryland in 1862, Proskauer was a captain. He was subsequently wounded in the stomach in the Battle of Antietam, or Sharpsburg, as the Confederates called it. Later in the war, while camped at Fredericksburg in Virginia in 1863, he applied to be a major. His colonel was a bit of an anti-Semite, and not wanting to lose a good captain, so he wanted to go before this examining board, and he told the general in charge, make it very difficult. I don't want him to pass. Well, after a full day of questioning on drilling, tactics, and strategy, the head of the examining board said about Proskauer, he answered every question promptly and accurately, and then added he knew more about tactics than any of the examining committee. They had no choice but to award him his promotion. As Major Proskauer, he led the 12th Alabama Infantry on Culp's Hill at Gettysburg. His captain later was quoted as saying, "Our gallant Jew, Major, smoked his cigars calm and coolly in the thickest of the fight." He went on to fight in many battles of the war, always with his fellow Alabamans. At the Battle of the Wilderness in 1864, he suffered his third wound, which took him out of the rest of the war. After the war, he returned to Mobile, was active in his synagogue, and was elected to the Alabama state legislature. In 1895, he moved to St. Louis, became successful in the insurance business, and was a business leader in the community as well as an active in Confederate veteran groups. He died in 1900 at the age of 62. A native board colonel, Leon Dawson Marks, was the son of a German Jew and a Christian mother. He grew up a practicing Jew. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Confederacy. His wife, incidentally, was Amelia, and she was a cousin of Julia Grant, wife of Ulysses. He organized the Shreveport Grays. Marks fought in the Peninsula Campaign, 7 Days, Cedar Mountain, and 2nd Manassas. But he met his fate at Vicksburg when shrapnel from an exploding shell hit him. Ironically, he was not in the line of battle at the time, but eating dinner in a shelter. He was brought back to Shreveport after the surrender of Vicksburg, but died a short time later at the age of 34. In Tennessee, there were many families that were split. Tennessee was a border state, and so there were people that went with both armies at that time. War split the Oaks family. Julius Oaks joined the Union Army, but his wife Bertha remained loyal to the South and was once arrested for trying to smuggle medicine to Confederate soldiers. She was a charter member of the Daughters of the Confederacy. Now, get this, she was buried with a Confederate flag on her coffin. Julius was buried right next to her with the Stars and Stripes on his coffin. So they battled that to the end. By the way, Julius was the father of Adolf, and Adolf Oaks ultimately became the owner and publisher of the New York Times. While there are many more Jewish Johnny Rebs I can make mention of here, there's one more I need to speak of before moving on. It's in light of the current controversy about all the monuments and statues. His name is Moses Ezekiel. He was born in 1844. He grew up in Richmond, Virginia, the son of a successful cotton merchant. He was one of 14 children. He was raised as an observant Jew. When Virginia seceded from the Union, he quickly enrolled in the Virginia Military Institute, VMI, and he became the first Jew to do so. By May 1864, the Confederacy was so desperate, it began sending cadets, including Ezekiel, to fight. At the Battle of Newmarket, Ezekiel's roommate was mortally wounded. That roommate's name was Thomas G. Jefferson, the great-great-nephew of President Thomas Jefferson. He died in Ezekiel's arms. After the war, Ezekiel family lost its livelihood when the warehouse, along with most of the rest of Richmond, was burned to the ground. Ezekiel resumed his studies at VMI and was initially considered going into medicine, But he had a conversation with Robert E. Lee, who he had struck up a friendship with, and Lee convinced him to change his mind. Aware of his artistic skills, he said to him, "I hope you will be an artist, as it seems to me you were cut out for one. But whatever you do, try to prove to the world that if we did not succeed in our struggle, we were worthy of success." This was kind of where this whole lost cause theory came out of. Moses went to Europe to study neoclassical sculpture and wound up in Rome, where his fame grew. He came back to the U.S., and in keeping with Lee's wishes and his ardent belief in the lost cause, he did many statues for the South. He did one which is very famous at VMI, and then at the University of Virginia. It was there his Thomas Jefferson statue was used by white supremacists in 2017 as a rallying point around which they shouted, ironically enough, "Jews will not replace us." Most famously, he created the Confederate Monument in Arlington Cemetery. He also did a statue which stands outside the Philadelphia Jewish Museum entitled "Religious Liberty." He died in 1917 in Italy, but since it was World War I at the time, he couldn't be buried till after the war. And then he was buried in Arlington National Cemetery at the foot of his Confederate memorial. His headstone reads, "Moses J. Ezekiel, Sergeant of Company C, Battalion of Cadets of the Virginia Military Institute." President Warren G. Harding praised Ezekiel, calling him a great Virginian, a great artist, a great American, and a great citizen of the world. Harding's statement was read at the funeral. A separate ceremony was held later by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. Now I ask you, where does art end and political statement begin? When does a monument perpetuate a cause, a lost cause? That cause ultimately supported the Jim Crow laws and the Jim Crow culture, and continues to be the subject, as we know, of controversy today. Do we honor the man and forgive the art? Now let's take a look at the Union side. It's said that the Civil War started right here, not at Beth Torah, but at the Kansas-Missouri border in 1856. Yes, 1856, not 1861. The first battle, which was really more of a skirmish, occurred outside of what is today Baldwin City in a place called Blackjack. On one side was John Brown and his abolitionist family and fellow anti-slavers, and the other, a group of pro-slavers, are called border ruffians. They were led by a deputy marshal called Clay Pate. One of the anti-slavers with Brown was a young man named August Bondy. He immigrated from Vienna and came to Kansas after his revolutionary activities in Austria fell apart. He took up abolitionism, and because of this, his farm was attacked. John Brown and his family came to his aid. Two other Jews, Theodore Weiner and Jacob Benjamin, also fought with Brown at Blackjack. It's said that while Weiner and Bondy were moving across the battlefield, with bullets flying around their heads, Bondy called to Weiner in Yiddish, "Well, what do you think of this now?" Bondy put his life on the line again when war broke out and enlisted in the Union Army, the 5th Kansas Cavalry. He said of the reason for joining, and I quote, "As a Yehudi, I had a duty to perform, to defend the institutions which gave equal rights to all beliefs." He fought for 3 years and was wounded several times. Finally, he could not continue. Bondy returned home and settled in Salina, where he served as a postmaster and county judge. He was also an active Mason. Bondy died in 1907, and there is a memorial plaque in Salina if you ever go down there. Jacob de Silva Solis Cone started out the war in the Army. As it happened with many, he was transferred then to the Navy, where he became an acting assistant surgeon assigned to Rear Admiral S.F. DuPont. Because of his experiences in the war, he became an expert in surgery of the upper nasal passages. Cone was a founder of the American Laryngology Association, and in 1892 became the first American to perform a complete laryngectomy. He died in 1927 at the age of 89. There were 4 Jews who attained the rank of general in the Union Army. One of the 4 Jews who rose to this rank I want to mention, Friedrich Neffler. He left Arad, Hungary, and the reason I wanted to mention him is because Arad, Hungary is now Arad, Romania, and Kansas City has a partnership with Romania, and I've actually been to the synagogue in Arad, Romania. He left there at age 26, and after fleeing his losing effort in the War of Hungarian Liberation, he arrived in 1859 in Indianapolis, and he and his family helped found the Indianapolis Hebrew congregation. There, when he was studying law, he met Lew Wallace, and you may remember Lew Wallace is the author of Ben-Hur. He also became a general in the Union Army. And when he became a general, he appointed Frederick to be an adjunct for him and was given the rank of first lieutenant in the 11th Regiment of the Indiana Volunteers. He fought in many battles, Shiloh, Stone River. He rose through the ranks and he led Union troops up Missionary Ridge and relieved the siege of Chattanooga. The wartime military was the ideal place for rapid promotions. After heroism under fire at Chickamauga, he was promoted to a major general and transferred to command under General Sherman, where he began with Sherman on his famous March to the Sea. After the war, he returned to Indianapolis and had a successful career in law and civil service. He died in 1901. The Medal of Honor was created by President Lincoln in 1862 to recognize gallantry by non-commissioned officers and privates. As I mentioned earlier, there were 6 Jews who earned that medal during the war. Let me tell you the stories of 2 of them. Sergeant Leopold Karpeles. He was born in Prague and immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 12. He joined the Army in Springfield, Massachusetts during the Battle of the Wilderness, a battle conducted in the woods, and it was filled with thick underbrush where the smoke from the weapons made it hard to see your unit, let alone your battle line. Sergeant Karpeles was the color sergeant, which means he carried the American flag. That automatically made him a target, and he was wounded. He still rallied the men of the 57th Massachusetts Infantry. Leopold stayed on the field until a loss of blood took him out of action. The flag was the only thing they could see, and if the flag held the position, so did the whole battle line. You know, they didn't have communications we have today to say go forward, go back, whatever, so they followed wherever that flag went. His general yelled, "Rally round the flag, boys." Karpeles' actions helped turn the Battle of the Wilderness from a defeat into a strategic victory, and after the battle, he was recommended for the Medal of Honor for his bravery. Benjamin Levy was just a drummer boy for the 1st New York Volunteers. At the Battle of Charles City Crossroads in Virginia, he rescued 2 battle flags that were dropped by their wounded flag bearers. It was part of the 7 Days Campaign in 1862. Though wounded, he carried those flags for the rest of the battle and kept them from falling into Confederate hands. Losing a flag to the enemy during a battle was considered a major disaster. Soldiers fought ferociously to keep their flag in their army. For his actions, he was promoted to color sergeant and then recommended for the Congressional Medal. After the war, Lincoln appointed him as a customs agent in New York. Now, what about that secret war, the spies that I talked about? What would be a war without espionage and spies? Well, there was one gentleman who was very famous. You may have heard his name, Judah Benjamin. He was the highest-ranking Jew in the Confederate government. First, he was Secretary of Defense. He didn't quite fit that position because he had no military experience. And he was then promoted to Secretary of State. When the war started, when the war started to look unwinnable, the Confederate government came up with a strategy to cause as much havoc and destruction for the Union as they could, while they could. The spy agency became located under the Department of State, putting Benjamin in charge. He sent agents to Montreal to establish a place to gather information and launch attacks in the North. It is said that the plot to kidnap Lincoln originated here, and these agents actually established a bank account for John Wilkes Booth. The Canadians got wind of this group and shut it down, but the plot had already been hatched. Now, Booth, we all know, changed the plot, and from a kidnapping, it became an assassination. It's said that Benjamin fled the country after the fall of the Confederacy, for he feared he would be blamed for Lincoln's death as the handler of Booth. On the northern side, we find a most unusual spy, one that Lincoln appointed himself. He was Lincoln's podiatrist. Issachar Zachari. Zachari not only took care of Lincoln's corns and bunions, but those of his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, and many of his generals. But Zachari was also a courier, spy, and secret emissary for Lincoln, carrying messages to New Orleans to General Butler. He was able to go to Richmond under the guise of visiting relatives. He brought back valuable information as to the state of the South as he traveled. Now, there was one major controversy during the war that affected the military, and that was the appointment of Jewish army chaplains. And we know when soldiers are lonely, when they're wounded or dying in the military, they turn to their chaplain. At the start of the war, there were no Jewish chaplains. Now, there have been military chaplains since the American Revolution. They were all Protestants until the time of the Mexican War, when civilian Roman Catholic priests were appointed. During the Civil War, we finally see the first regular army Catholic priests. The first official Jewish chaplain in the U.S. was Reverend Jacob Frankel of Philadelphia's congregation Rodef Shalom, and he was appointed in September of '62. This came about after Jewish chaplains were rejected by the army because of the way the regulations had been written. In 1861, Congress ordered military regiments to appoint chaplains who were specifically of the Christian faith. Following protests by the Board of Delegates of American Israelites and thanks to personal introductions by others, a meeting was held in December 1861 with President Lincoln. This led to the rescinding of the order and the appointment of the first Jewish chaplain. Some sources consider this perhaps the first example of organized Jewish lobbying in Washington. Now, you might ask, how did these young men, both North and South, observe their religion and deal with services and holidays, etc.? In most cases, there were few Jews in a company, and if there were, that services just didn't exist. They did the best they could. If they were religious and they were near a town with a synagogue, they would seek it out and sometimes get home hospitality as well. Since most of the Confederates fought in their territory, that wasn't much of an issue. But for Union troops who mostly fought on Southern soil, it could be difficult. Here's one example. Soldiers Henry Frank and Isaac Lowenberg were part of the Union Army in Vicksburg. They wandered into the store of John Mayer and identified themselves as Jews and asked if there were local services. There were, and as it turned out, Mayer was president of the small congregation, Anshai Chesed. He invited them to come to the high holiday services. Now, you can imagine they weren't particularly welcome amongst their Southern brethren, but by the end of the war, Lowenberg had convinced Mayer's daughter, Ophelia, to marry him, despite her feelings about the Yankee Yehudim. Passover could also be a challenge. Where there were few Jews in a unit, they sought out a place they could gather and creatively plan a Seder. One such Seder took place in 1862. J.A. Joel and 20 of his comrades in the 23rd Ohio found themselves outside Fayette, West Virginia. Their commander gave them a pass for a few days, and a local sutler who happened to be Jewish and was heading for Cincinnati said he would send back some matzah for them. Well, a short time later, a train arrived with a barrel full of matzah and prayer books. It arrived right before the holiday. The soldiers went into the woods and built a log hut for shelter and services and sent out a foraging party for the meal. They returned with 3 kegs of cider, a lamb, several chickens, and some eggs. They could not find horseradish or parsley, but in lieu, Joel reported they found a weed whose bitterness I apprehend exceeded anything our forefathers enjoyed. They didn't know the part of the lamb to put on the table, so they cooked the whole thing to make sure, quote, they had the right part. They also had no chorosis, so they got a brick, which they obviously couldn't eat, but it reminded them of the purpose for which it was intended. Joel conducted the service, but when it came to the bitter herb, it was like cayenne pepper. Whereupon the soldiers, many of them, drank all of the cider, and as he put it, some became so excited they thought they were Aaron, Moses, or Pharaoh and had to be carried back to camp. Joel later wrote of this Passover in the wild woods of West Virginia, "Here we were, away from home and friends. We consecrated and offered up to the ever-loving God of Israel our prayers and our sacrifice. There is no occasion in my life that gives me more pleasure and satisfaction than when I remember the celebration of Passover of 1862. Jewish veterans of all wars can probably relate to this and recount their own experiences trying to fulfill their faith. These Jewish warriors, both North and South, fought because of a sense of duty, of patriotism. They battled at times to protect their hearth and homes, their wives, their families, their children, and their way of life. Some lived in the U.S. for generations, their ancestors having served in the Revolution and the War of 1812. Many had recently immigrated from Germany, Central Europe, Poland, and Russia. They saw this as a way to give back to their new land, much as the Irish did when they came during the war. For others, military service became a ladder of mobility. As in the military today, now there was no GI Bill at the time, but it was still, if they served in a certain way, they could come out and get good jobs because of it. And they learned skills and leadership. And they used that to improve their post-war lives. Whatever their reasons, they didn't hesitate to answer their country's call, much as our veterans of today. And like some soldiers, they gave it their last full measure. We honor their ultimate sacrifice. As a final note to the war, in proof of Jewish service and gallantry and reaction to the anti-Semites in 1896, 78 Jewish Union Civil War veterans banded together and formed the Hebrew Union Veterans Association. Today, we know it as the Jewish War Veterans. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have seen their display in the main lobby of the campus. It is the oldest veterans organization and the only Jewish organization with a charter from Congress. And if you go to Washington, D.C. today, you can go to the American Jewish Military Museum, which also houses the JWV headquarters. Now, just check on the hours and the days before it's open. I tried to go and I couldn't get in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention. Once again, to all the veterans, thank you for your service, and Shabbat Shalom. I'm happy to take questions. Any questions? Yes.
Were there any Jews that fought the conflict in Kansas City and the skirmishes over a 3-day period? If there weren't any Jews that fought in the battle, I think the history buffs out there were a lot of famous people that came through here that fought, became famous political people in Washington. But I wonder if any Jews helped the battle, people that were here, because both sides had some.
Right. You know, I didn't find it.
Just for the people that are listening at home, the question was, were any Jews fought around here in the Battle of Kansas City and the battles in this area?
So,
Battle of Westport.
first of all, from Kansas, from what I was able to find, there were only 6 Jews that signed up for the Union Army. There were more from Missouri. But I don't know if the troops that came in from Missouri, the Union troops, and I don't know of the Confederate troops, there were none that I came across in any of the research that I did. I don't think Botany was in that battle. There was no mention of him being that battle, so I'm not aware of any. Yeah, yeah.
About that. My question was about a peddler, a Jewish peddler going from between the troops and selling wares. And what would they sell is another question I had.
Sure.
What kinds of things?
Well, they were also called sutlers, and I mentioned that one sutler who went back to Cincinnati and forwarded those materials to the troops for Passover. I didn't come across any specific names in my research of any particular sutlers. What they did do is all kinds of supplies. Everything from a pot or a pan, if they needed sewing kits. I mean, it was kind of like the grocery store of the Army. The PX, if you will, like we have today. That's what the peddlers did for the Army. And they would follow along with the Army as it went and set up shop, and then the soldiers would come and buy things from them. Yes, Amy?
Wait.
Wait. Oh, we've got something in the back?
Have
No?
you found any evidence that there were any bushwhackers who were Jewish?
Amy was asking about the bushwhackers, which were on the Missouri side and were the pro-slavers. I did not, Amy. I did not find any evidence, and I haven't. I've been to a few lectures and things about the bushwhackers and the border ruffians. I have not found anything, though, mentioning any Jews as part of that group. Yes, Kevin.
Todd, I'm familiar how Christians spun the Bible to support racial theory, but I haven't heard anything about how Jews in the South might use the Torah, for example, to justify their beliefs in slavery.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. I didn't get into any of the pre-war things and the whole question of slavery because I just didn't have the time, but let me answer that here because I did quite a bit of research for my original presentation at the Day of Discovery. Yes, as a matter of fact, there was big controversy before the war because, as we all know, beside the fact that we were slaves in the land of Egypt, the Torah also allows for slavery, okay? Now, there are strict conditions as to that, and it was really more like an indentured servant than the slavery that we knew in the South. But it was used as a justification, and there were rabbis, even rabbis in the North. There was a very famous rabbi, I believe his last name was Raphael, in Manhattan, an Orthodox rabbi, who justified slavery because of what was in the Torah. And so there was a lot of controversy, and the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati did not want to take strong positions about this whole issue because they were right on the border, and they had a lot of people who were in southern congregations. So they kind of tried to stay neutral to the whole question. But southern rabbis definitely justified this using our own Bibles. So we kind of find it hard today to look at that and justify it, but that was the South in those days, and the Jews wanted to fit in. They wanted to be a part of it. So they did.
There you go.
I was wondering if the soldiers had problems for keeping kosher during the war.
It was non-existent. If you were that religious and kept kosher, you were out of luck. You had to eat whatever it was that was there. And a lot of times, as an army was on the move, they did what they called foraging, where they had to go out into the landscape and get whatever they could. So the best that somebody who really was intent on keeping kosher could do was just try to eat vegetables and not eat any of the meat. But it was a very difficult thing to do when you're burning the kind of calories that today burned, in a day of marching or of fighting. So very, very hard to do that. Like I said, it was pretty much non-existent amongst the troops. And it wasn't like today where they could go, and request if there was a holiday or something, kosher food. That just didn't happen. Anything online? Nothing online. Okay. Other questions in the audience? No? If not, thank you all very much, and I'll stick around for a moment if you want to ask anything more.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you to Todd. That was unbelievable, and life is full of stories, right? All of our lives are a collection of stories, and thank you for sharing so many with us tonight. Also, thank you to our worship team, Rabbi Katapan, Leslie Zucker, Warren Sickle, and Howard Pittler. Thank you to our Bow Committee Chair, Dave Zucker, who literally brought us beyond our walls tonight. And thank you to our Abundant Shalom Squad. A few quick announcements. Our Shabbat celebration will continue tomorrow morning with Sichat Shabbat, our Shabbat conversation, at 9 o'clock a.m., followed by our Shabbat morning service at 10:30 a.m. Both are multi-access. So however you would like to join us, we look forward to coming together. And then next Friday is November 19th, which is our Mizmor Shir Shabbat, extra musical, and again, multi-access. A few different musical opportunities this week. First of all, on Sunday, is JFS's Service of Spiritual Renewal for Hanukkah, which Leslie will be leading. All are welcome to join in person at Village Shalom. All of the information about RSVPing is in the e-news. And if you'd rather not go in person, it will be recorded, and we will share the link after the fact. Also, we have multi-access song session this Tuesday, November 16th at 7 o'clock p.m. All are welcome to come in person and online. A few opportunities this coming Sunday. First of all, we have an app, so make sure that you download our CBT app. You can find that by searching CBT Synagogue in your app store. And Dave Zucker will be here on Sunday morning from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. to offer app support. So if you have any questions, bring your smartphone, tablet, iPad, and he will be here. Also on Sunday, the gift shop will be open. So believe it or not, Hanukkah is in just about 2 weeks. So now is the time to get those candles and dreidels from our Beth Torah gift shop. We're almost there. And just today, we launched our Hanukkah schedule. So every single night of Hanukkah, we will light the Chanukiah together from our own homes. And as you can see, we have many friends who are welcoming us into their home via Zoom, a few of whom are here tonight. We will bring our sufganiyot, we will bring our latkes, we will use our favorite menorah. We will bring our favorite currency, like gelt, so there's a lot to look forward to. And last but not least, in terms of announcements, I invite all Beth Torah alumni and friends in their 20s and 30s to join me to spin with Beth Torah like spinning a dreidel. We will be ice skating at Crown Center and going to Spin Pizza to spin out the night. All right, and very last but not least, thank you very much to Larry Meyer, our congregational president, for sponsoring tonight's Civil War-inspired to-go oneg to go, in honor of Todd Stettner. Now, Todd was thinking, what could be the items that are Civil War-inspired? Are you ready to find out? All right, so, in fact, there are a number of Civil War-era foods that are still popular today, two of which everyone in person will have the opportunity to try in the ulam. First of all, drum roll. Ooh, cheese biscuits. Cheese biscuits first appeared in the 19th century and therefore were a staple during the Civil War era. Was that one of your guesses? Nope, all right. And the second, another drum roll. Horehound candies. Horehounds are sweet tea turned into bite-sized hard candies. Was that a guess? Look at that. I'm glad we surprised you. In fact, I tried one of the horehounds this afternoon, and it is quite delicious. So it's just like an iced tea, but in hard candy form. So everyone here, I invite you to join us in the ulam for to-go neg. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in person and online. Shabbat Shalom.